The Jack and Joe show is back. However, we were 9 games unbeaten and we didn't record much over the Christmas period because it was busy with games and work and family and everything and New Year and all that jazz. Then we finally go, right, we'll record definitely after West Ham. And then we put in one of the most incredible performances I've ever seen. Incredible being a bad term in this case. Joe Sansom alongside me. First of all, Happy New Year. I suppose it's a bit late to say that. But also, we're speaking today, but we're incredibly frustrated.
Yeah. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to everyone watching. Sorry for the long gap in between videos and content. Since we last spoke, we've played Southampton, Chelsea, Bournemouth, Watford, Ipswich, wrong way around there, and then obviously West Ham. And like you said, Jack, finally succumbed to a defeat, and it's after we'd locked in a recording session. Just the way it goes. Must say I'm incredibly relieved I was not at the London Stadium last night. I know you were. I know that 3,000 Fulham fans were. I will be at the King Power on Saturday, which I'm incredibly excited for. But last night felt like it was one of the most head loss nights I think you can have as a fan, as a one-off game. Forget any other context. As a one-off game, the fashion that we let in goals, the fashion that we missed chances, the momentum of the game swinging back and forth in the way it did, the individual errors from players, unforced errors. It was just a culmination of so many things. Don't think we'll have as frustrating a defeat for a long, long time, especially when you factor in, and you know what, congratulations to West Ham, got a win that was important for them with a severely, let's face it, it was almost like their B team in some aspects of it, in terms of midfield in particular, and up front, I should say, sorry, not midfield. They had to put out a very defensive lineup, and they managed to grind out 3 points, 3 undeserved points, I would say, and I don't think I'm being bitter to say that. I just simply think that some of the content I'm reading online about how West Ham really dug in, I think that there was an enormous amount of luck involved. I don't think they defended particularly well at all. Just quite simply, we didn't take our chances, and we handed them 2 goals, basically a third as well, on a platter. They touched the ball twice in our box. One of them was a header that went just wide in the final few seconds of the game from Paqueta. The other one, obviously, being the Souček goal. 2 incredible games. But Jack, what was it like being there? Because watching on TV, it felt like the momentum completely swung. And I think you tweeted it as well. I only saw this morning because my TNT's on a slight lag. Don't want to get any spoilers. The momentum seemed to completely swing when West Ham scored their disallowed goal in the ground. It almost felt like West Ham had been completely pinned back, hadn't touched the ball in our half pretty much. When it did, it was completely mopped up by Anderson, Bassi, Lukic, whoever. The disallowed goal goes in from a set piece, rightly disallowed for offside. And after that, it felt like Fulham just lost a bit of impetus, a bit of confidence. West Ham gained a bit, started pressing us a bit higher. And that's ultimately where the first goal came from. And they never really looked back.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Within the first half an hour, I was thinking, well, if we can just take a chance, a goal is coming. A goal is coming because we're so on top here, and we've got all the ball. Every time West Ham try and clear their lines or make an attack, we press them and we win the ball back. And the crowd were getting very frustrated. Fulham were having a great time. I was having a great time. I was just thinking, at some point, something's got to give and we're going to score. And West Ham win a couple of set pieces, and then there's an opportunity to put the ball in the box. The ball goes in it was Kilman in the end. The flag goes up. I start laughing because I go, well, wouldn't that be like, if this is still onside, their first sort of chance? I thought before the free kick, I said, wouldn't this be just incredibly funny if this goes in? And of course, they score from it. It's offside. And then I literally do tweet, Fulham just need to gain a bit of composure right now. And we did. And I tweeted subsequently that we did the exact opposite. We lost all composure. In fact, I've never seen anything like it. This wasn't like we've just conceded, therefore we need to pick ourselves up. It was like, well, they've scored, but it's offside. We just need to get back to what we were doing and get on with the game. And unfortunately, we made some wrong decisions. I think Leno's initial pass out to then put us back under pressure, and then the ball falls to Pereira after a second pass. Then he gives the ball away. I think that was really, really poor from Leno, and then obviously subsequently from Pereira. just don't pass across your box. You can't make an assumption in a Premier League game that if you pass it across your box, it's just going to land to one of your centre backs or the keeper. There's always going to be someone of the opposition there to try and nab the ball back and Salah dead. And I just couldn't believe what I was seeing, because within 2 minutes of conceding that goal, we conceded a second. It's almost like it was a second phase, because the chance had, I wouldn't say gone, but the ball was flashed in and it went across to Wan-Bissaka. It just all felt so like it felt inevitable that something was going to happen there. I couldn't believe it. It was like watching one of the best performances I've ever seen to the worst in the space of 2 minutes, and I just can't believe it. I thought the whole game was ridiculous. I thought there were so many patterns in the game that were so similar, i.e. both our goals, two of their goals were exactly the same. It felt like I was watching a clown show. I felt like I was at the circus at times. It was just ridiculous. And what's so frustrating about this is that all the narrative coming into the game was about Potter's first game, need to get off to a good start. And yet in the half an hour, they were absolutely horrendous. And we were very, very good. And we just let them have the game, let them have the points due to our own mistakes. I'm pretty, from my perspective this season, when things have gone wrong, I've sort of kept a calm head and gone, well, that's football. But in that situation, at 2-0 down, my head was on the moon. I couldn't actually quite believe what I was seeing, and had to sort of compose myself, because I was tweeting things very blasé, and I thought, actually, I need to slow down here, because I just don't want to come across as a bitter journalist. But at the time, I was incredibly upset. Joe, from watching from home, you must have felt very much the same as every Fulham fan inside that ground. What on earth and how has that happened? And of course, individual performances last night that were below par. A lot of fingers being pointed at Leno, of course, and Pereira, obviously, and Anderson as well, and Emil Smith-Rowe. I thought apart from that, everyone else had a fairly good game, and some issues going forward.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, the individual performances, not just the mistakes. There was a few individual performances that were way off it, a few of which from players that have been off it, unfortunately, for a little while or more regularly than they should be, namely Smith-Rowe recently. I know he's just come back from injury. Similar with Anderson, also come back from injury and doesn't look the same player. Looks slower than he did, and he was looking quite slow to begin with, in all honesty. That's one thing that he's never been blessed with, is great pace. It's more his positioning and reading of the game that sort of allowed him to deal with situations where he would often get caught out. But positionally, since he's come back, he's been miles off it. A player that I haven't seen too many people mention as well was Castagne. I thought that here and Anderson on that right-hand side of defence were pretty calamitous at the back. I didn't enjoy his performance, although he wasn't necessarily at fault specifically for any of the goals. And Robinson and Bassey, I don't think defensively they cover themselves in any glory either. For that second goal, when the ball falls to Wan-Bissaka, they are miles off it. They're miles away. And if you're not by the player that's crossing it in, then you need to be doing your bit and marking someone in the middle. And Souček is just completely unmarked.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you about the first goal, and I know that Marco Silva picked up on it in his presser as well, as everyone's obviously focusing on Pereira because he made the final action before Sola had the ball. But I agree with you that Leno could have avoided this situation altogether. I saw a very true thread on Twitter between two Fulham fans. Can't remember who they were. Sorry if it was you watching. Let us know. But it was one person saying, the way that we play that pass about 5 times a game. In terms of Pereira's almost behind the attacker that's pressing. And it's true. It's how we unlock a lot of defences. So Leno passing it to him is a pre-planned move that we always use. So is Pereira passing there. I remember kind of similar against Villa at home last season, but from a throw-in situation when Robinson tried to pass it back to Willian, who was coming deep, to then spring a pass around behind the defenders to basically bypass their first line of pressing. I understand the point of it. When you're Leno, you need to play the situation. The momentum swung in the game. It's 0-0. The crowd are suddenly up for it when they weren't before. If we can just relieve pressure for a few minutes, we should get back to how things were. Because honestly, it's been about 60 seconds since that disallowed goal or something like that. The ball's also on to Bassey at left back in that position. He's sort of gone a bit wider. The only pass that he shouldn't make there is Pereira. He should hit it long. And I want to make a comparison here between Matt Sells at Forest, who I saw last night multiple times after our game had ended, and against Wolves a couple of weeks ago when they were on the box as well on the Monday night. Just hit it long if you need to. Just hit it long and reorganise yourselves, because defensively we're normally pretty organised. It's often a few individual errors, but we're quite hard to break down if we sit back. I think that the stupidity of some of our players, what annoys me and how avoidable it is. I think back to the Ipswich game only a week and a half, and I think of that first goal that we let in, and the fact that if Bassi just puts his foot through the ball, we go in at half-time 0-0.
9 out of 10 times that's a clearance.
Yeah. And then I think of, Castagna, if he just stands up and doesn't put a foot in, Delap's actually not going anywhere, really. He's not going to be able to score from there. There's too many bodies in front of the goal. But no, he has to put a leg in. And it's these things that I notice when I watch teams that are better, admittedly, defensively, like Forest, when I just think they just cut out those stupid errors that we seem to see every single week. And if we did that, we'd be miles up the table. But ultimately, they're too frequent for it to be something that we can just go, that doesn't happen next time, because it does, annoyingly. And a lot of people have put this down to quality in our team and how we're not quite there. And I do know what they mean, because Marco Silva's done wonders with this team, where if you look at each player individually, as much as we've improved this year, there's a few where you think, if you put him in a team that is sixth in the table, do they stand out like a sore thumb? I think probably, yeah. I'm thinking of Castagna in that instance. I'm thinking of Pereira. I'm thinking of, even for as good as he's been this season, Jimenez. Does he play for a top team? Probably not. Not good enough in duels and things like that and build up. As much as I think he's actually improved on that aspect of his game this season. And when you combine all these things, if these players have an off day, then you don't have enough quality to get through that game. The players that should be pulling us over the line weren't quite up to it. I'm talking about Leno, who often has great games, saved us at Chelsea, saved us as well against Bournemouth. He's probably man of the match that game. He was great. Smith Rowe, for the price tag he's not doing at the moment, I still do think there's a player that's going to come good. But unfortunately, I can't pretend that we haven't seen it. We haven't seen it since November against Crystal Palace. And that was a sort of performance that we should be seeing week in, week out. He was great the week before against Brentford. The week before that against Everton, he was okay, but he made a run that provided the assist for Iwobi. So there was still a match-winning, nearly, moment in that game for him. It's very, very frustrating. And then obviously, forget the defensive nature, Jack. I mean, let's say we still let in 3 last night. Wilson hitting the bar, Jimenez hitting the bar, Jimenez forcing a save, and then obviously that.
I think Iwobi should have gone for goal. I think Iwobi should have gone for goal.
For the one way pass to Jimenez, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, would he have known he'd scored a hat-trick? Probably not, which is very funny.
Really
everyone
funny.
would be like, that was your third goal. And he's like, no, that's my first goal, mate.
Yeah, it was incredible.
The one at the end, Jack, is living in my head, I've got to say, with Lukic and Adama.
Yeah, it's an incredible passage of play. Wan-Bissaka heads it, maybe not quite off the line, but away from goal as it's going towards goal. And then the ball comes back in. Lukic is like millimeters away from the ball. Still doesn't get. There's 2 West Ham players on the line. I still think if Lukic gets a touch, it's going to go in because it's so close to goal. And then it falls to Adama. I don't think this is necessarily like guaranteed goal, but also
no,
he just smashes it over. You've got to just have a bit more composure.
The defender did well, but when I've seen it back when my head was slightly more lukewarm, let's say, the defender does well to rush out at him and he has to make a snap decision.
Yes.
And let's face it, if he tries to place that and it goes wrong, he's getting hammered for not smashing it. It just went wrong. But it's just such a shame that Lukic, I mean, it looked like he got like a tiny connection on the ball and it seemed like that would be enough. Just bizarre that didn't end in a goal. And ultimately, let's face it, 3-3 would not have been the result we wanted. It probably still wouldn't have been the result we merited for the majority of the game. I think we had 15 poor minutes yesterday. But the unbeaten run, the London Derby's record would have continued. And, you go into that Leicester game thinking, okay, well, if we beat Leicester, that's 4 points when we wanted 6. It's not as bad.
It would have been a blip if we'd have drawn. And it would have been like, well, actually, to be fair, they grabbed a point from us at Craven Cottage. We've nabbed a point at the London Stadium. I haven't watched the game back. I haven't watched the highlights back since last night, and the reason for it is I don't want to. I will at some point because obviously you have to, but right now I just haven't been in the mood to watch it. Just because of the manner of how we conceded. Joe, this whole season so far has felt like we've been invited to the best party in the whole world, and we've turned up, and they've turned us away at the door and said, "You're wearing the wrong uniform. You don't have the right shoes for this party." And the party being European football and everything that comes with it. I think it's very important that we're at this stage of the season now where we've lost a bad game. Everyone's upset.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I was as upset as any other Fulham fan last night, but I did just have to take a little step back after reading Twitter last night. 6 defeats in 21 is still incredibly impressive at this time in the league. Yes, I know there's a draws, and within that run we've only had 2
actually
wins.
5, isn't it? It's actually only 5 defeats.
Did I say 6? I meant 6 in actually all comps then, isn't it?
Oh, in all comps, of course. Preston,
sorry.
Yeah.
So 5, 5 in the league from 21 is insane. Is actually quite incredible. What was my other point? I think that I saw a tweet saying season over, focus on the cup. And I'm thinking, well, it's not over, is it? Nothing's over yet. It's just a reactionary take from a Fulham fan whose emotions are high, and obviously, if 10 other people would have said that as well, I would still disagree. It's just one of those things. We've been in seasons before where we've lost game after game after game, and there's still hope that you can achieve something that season. To only lose 5 in 21 and then say season over in the Premier League. Well, what is it we're chasing? I think we're chasing a European spot. Do I think we're going to get a European spot? Probably not. And that's just based on the teams above us. I think Bournemouth, even last night, getting what should have been a win against Chelsea, and they let in a late free kick. Brighton, Newcastle have improved massively. Nottingham Forest don't seem like they're going away. In fact, they're probably going for the title, not even Europe. So it's quite extraordinary what we're seeing. It just feels as if everyone outside the top 6 who is involved in this incredibly exciting party that I just mentioned has just upped it a little bit. And Fulham have only upped it a tiny bit, not as much as everyone else. And what is now exciting is a trip to the DW against Wigan in a tie that I think is incredibly winnable. I don't want to tempt fate. I don't want to get jinx it. I remember last night I did a live stream on Twitter and I started talking about no defeats in London against a London team for a while. Can we make it 10 games unbeaten? And we lost the game. That's not down to my words. That's down to individual errors from players. But if we get to round 5 of the FA Cup, and you just never know who you're going to get from there, the season's well and truly still alive. There's so much still to play for in this season. If we go to Leicester and win, which we're about to preview right now, everyone will forget about what happened, and it would just be one of those ones where, well, if we didn't do this, we would be on. But then you could say that about almost a dozen more games this season. So it's just football, Joe, and it's not been a bad season. In fact, it's been a very, very good season, but it could have been a better season. It could have been an outrageous season, which is the frustration.
Yeah, right now it's a season of what could have been, even though we're only just over halfway through. But I've got a couple of reasons to remain positive that I'll bring to you right now. So hopefully lift morale if you're watching this. Mm-hmm. So we're in 9th right now, 30 points. We are, worst case scenario tonight, 2 points off 8th if Villa lose to Everton. Mm-hmm. Let's say they win, for example, we would be 4 points off 8th, and that would be Bournemouth that dropped down. Now, 4 points is not insurmountable. 4 points is quite small. Obviously, it could get worse. Bournemouth have got a terrible injury record, and they still did a great job last night. Like you said, nearly won the game at Stamford Bridge. That would obviously mean that 8th could get Europe. 8th could get Conference League. There is a very strong chance of that happening. I would 100% take being 4 points off. We could be closer, but there's still time for us to hopefully do something in the market, and we'll have to wait and see what that is. Another reason to be cheerful, Jack, is I was having a quick look before this in quite nerdy fashion. I've looked at The first half of this season, in terms of our fixtures, so the first 19 games, and I've mapped out also the second half. So I'm looking at my screen right now, and I've compared that fixture to what we did last season. So, for example, let's say Leicester at home, the equivalent side to Leicester was Luton last season. We beat Luton last season at home 1-0. We beat Leicester at home this season 2-1. So 3 points remains the same. Out of our first 19 games in the exact fixtures, home and away, we got 29 points this season. We got 29 points last season, right? So exactly the same amount. They came in different places. You know, we won at Chelsea, we lost last year. We got a point at Spurs we didn't last year, but at the same time, we beat West Ham at home. We drew this year. Things like that. We beat Man United. We lost this year. Obviously, so far, we've only had 2 fixtures of our second half. Would you like to guess? So obviously, we've got 29 points in the first round of fixtures. How many points did we get in that second half of fixtures last season? You have to remember they weren't played in the second half. They were played various points in the season.
It was like 21.
It's actually slightly less. It was 18 from the equivalent fixtures, obviously not played at the same time. What that means is, and we've already got 1 point, because obviously we got a point against Ipswich. We didn't get one against West Ham. That means that we need another 18 points from our remaining, 17 games, just under a point a game, to beat last year's points tally. Last year's points tally, if you look at the table, even though, let's face it, we weren't close to getting Europe. I mean, we weren't, 13th. But I'm looking at the table. Yeah, we finished 13th. If we'd have won a few more games, we'd be in ninth. If we'd won 2 more games, we'd be in 9th. Then there was a 7-point gap to 8th. We're so much closer to the pack. It's one of these things where the league that's more huddled together in that group. A good run puts you right back up there. A bad run slides you right back down. It's not done yet. Do I think we'll get Europe right now? No, I don't think we're good enough to. I think that we play well for 95% of the games. What I'm trying to say is it's definitely not over yet at all. And a win against Leicester puts us right back up there. The problem we've had is that a lot of the fixtures where we should be winning, we haven't. For example, last night, for example, a similar fixture in Leicester. But we also have a winnable, like you say, fixture in the Cup. Will we win it? We don't know. We might not. It might be a shock, but we've got a winnable fixture to get into round 5. So the season is not done. And I would love to see us have some ambition in the transfer market and appreciate that we've got a strong chance here, but we need some more goal scorers in this team urgently. We really do.
I was speaking with Aaron Paul after the game, brilliant radio host on BBC Radio London and other places as well, 5 Live. And he just said, Jack, the difference is if you had a striker who can put the ball in the back of the net, 20-goal striker, and we've said it for a while. He referenced Victor Gyökeres when he was available, when we lost Micho, and Gyökeres was, well, he ended up going to Sporting Lisbon, and obviously he's turned into the player that he has now. But when he was at Coventry, I feel like anyone could have signed him, and it wouldn't have been a major shock. If Fulham had signed him, no one would be like, well, why is he going to Fulham? It would have been a right move for him. Sporting Lisbon took the gamble, and it's completely paid off. He is now one of the most sought after strikers in Europe. I despair sometimes because I look back and I go, when we lost Micho, did we miss the bus on signing a top striker? And you look at players like Gyökeres, and then obviously I still think, Raul and Muniz, I enjoy them. I enjoy what they bring to the team, not only on the pitch but also off it as well. Some great characters in there. It's blatantly obvious we are lacking that sort of striker who can score 20 goals per season. But maybe it just wasn't the right time. There wasn't the right profile of striker. There wasn't the right character to bring in. And I think that's something we're going to have to look at in the summer, of course. This window is strange because there's been more rumours of players leaving than players coming in. I saw your tweet, quote tweeting my tweet on Friday or whatever, Monday when the press conference was, about a right back as well. We're in the exact same situations we were 3 years ago when Dennis Adoy left, and we were like, well, we need to bring in Nico Williams, and we brought him in on deadline day, and that was our second right back. If Castagna was to get injured, and I know you're not his biggest fan at the moment, we have no one apart from Gofford and Bradley De Jesus in the under-21s who can play right back.
Yeah. And look, like you say, like Castagne's slightly frustrating me at the moment, but he is I would say 6 out of 10 minimum most weeks, does a job.
Yeah.
But if we lose him, we're in big trouble. So, I mean, yeah, I think that we need to look at a right back, because it sounds like Tete's out until, you said, like end of March at the earliest, so that's the majority of the second half of the season. If we are going to be looking at playing in 2 competitions simultaneously, I know that they're often on different weekends. It's not like it's a Saturday, Tuesday situation, but, we need someone there. And also, just from an entirely logical contract standpoint, I think that signing someone, even if it's like a loan deal, for example, with an option, puts a bit of pressure on Tete's party, his agent, to agree to a deal that hopefully we are putting on the table. Sort of puts the ball in our court a bit, meaning that, we've covered ourselves. We've got 2 right backs. Do you want to stay or not? And if he doesn't, we're ready to move on. I don't want to move on from Tete. I think he's great. And I think that the drop off from him to Castagne is unfortunately extremely large at the moment. I mean, Castagne is not playing his best football. When he does, it's a lot closer. And obviously, there was a reason he kept his place for so long last season. But at the moment, it's night and day.
Because Castagne was the main right back last season, because Tete got injured and Tete couldn't get back in the team. It's such a weird one, because obviously there's this overhanging sort of issue with Tete's contract running down, and the fact he's injured for such a long amount of time sort of obviously doesn't mean out of sight, out of mind. Everyone's still talking about Kenny Tete's contract situation, but it does put like a cloud of uncertainty over the situation, because he's just not playing. And when he comes back, is he going to be the same player? He's not the youngest player in the world, and I think that I would love Tete to stay. He's been one of my favorite Fulham players, in the last few years. I think Sasha Lukic and Sander Berger, that midfield 2, needs to come back. Let's talk about the Leicester game now. Leicester are a team who have had a very odd season. They brought in Ruud van Nistelrooy after sacking Steve Cooper. He got off to the perfect start against West Ham, and since then it's been not very good at all. I do think Leicester will drop. I think they'll go down this season. I'm just not sure who the third team is. That's still something I'm trying to make up in my mind. Leicester play tonight, I believe.
Yeah.
Yes, it's today's Wednesday. How do you see this one going at the King Power? I mean, it's a fixture we won last time though in the Prem. We won 1-0. Mitrovic with the goal. It was a good performance, a clean sheet away from home. I feel like if we play exactly the way we played last night before we conceded, we can take them to the cleaners. Absolutely.
I completely agree. And that's almost what makes me slightly nervous, because obviously of the short-term bias of what happened last night. We play like we did exactly last night, and 9 times out of 10, I would say we win against that caliber of opposition. I would say that West Ham are better than Leicester. West Ham a couple of months ago had the exact, I think it was the start of last month, actually, start of December. They had the exact same sort of night that we did at the King Power, where they dominated the game. I think over 3 expected goals. They lost 3-1. And to be honest, that was Ruud van Nistelrooy's first game in charge. And it was a bit like, oh, yes, you've won. A little bit like Potter last night, but the performance was poor. The performance was poor. This is not going to happen every week. I think Leicester fans have realised that defensively, Ruud's not been able to solve anything yet. I mean, partly down to just personnel. The squad's not good enough from a defensive point of view. The keeper was saving him in a lot of games early on in the season. Hermansen obviously got injured then. I really think this is a game that we should be going at them from the very start. I'm interested to see how they get on against Palace in a home game that they probably need to aim for 3 points in. They'll see us the exact same way. They'll see anyone that's sort of in that mid-table region, anywhere from probably 8th down, as they need to get 3 points from that to mount a survival charge. But I can see us having all the ball, majority of the ball, I should say. And I can see us having a similar start to the game as last night. I just really hope we can take our chances, because they do have some players that can hurt us. Vardy's always a threat. Buonanotte's had a great season for them. Mustn't forget they've got Bobby Reid, who's often been involved from the bench, but, is still there. They have some good individual quality in attacking areas. It's just they haven't really been able to make it stick, and nothing's really come off for them so far. It is a game, I'll get onto my score prediction now, Jack, that I back us to win. I'm going to go for 3-1 Fulham. I don't think we'll keep a clean sheet. I can see another clanger or something, but I'm backing us to score a few of our goals this time, and I imagine the team will be absolutely seething from last night. I know that right now they all seem in our heads like public enemy number one. We have to remember this team's given us some fantastic moments this season.
Yeah.
I've seen people question mentality. I've seen people question togetherness. I don't agree with that. If this continued like last night long term, fine, you're valid, but it hasn't. And we've shown a lot of character this season in many games. In terms of the team, what I'm expecting is that the defence will be the same. What I want is that Diop will come back in for Anderson, because I think that it was a little bit unjust that he was dropped. He's been our best centre-back defensively this season. He's been better than Bassi, and he's been miles better than Anderson. In midfield, it all hinges on if Sander Berg is back. I really hope he is. We thought he might be involved last night. He wasn't.
Wasn't even in the squad.
Wasn't even in the bench, which is a bit of a killer. I think the midfield is clear. It is clear if Berg is back, because it'll be Lukic, him, and I mean, let's face it, I think it should be Smith Rowe. I know that he's not everyone's cup of tea at the moment. I understand why. I think you've got to persist with him and give him at least another 60 minutes to make something happen. I thought he was looking quite bright early on yesterday, and he sort of fell away with the game as the momentum went. And the same front three. I would be very intrigued by Josh King starting. I would be intrigued, but I would also rather go with Smith Rowe from the start, because I think we have to make this work. And if he can get back to some of the football he was showing early on, maybe it works when there's two slightly more defensive players behind him in Lukic and Berger. That's what I'd like to see. What would you like to see?
I'm thinking about the team now, and if Berger's not available, I'd start Tom Cairney alongside Sasha Lukic. Gives us a little bit more control on the ball. And I think it would give the license for Smith Rowe to have more of an impact behind the front line.
Yeah.
I do believe when Pereira and Smith Rowe are playing together, a lot of the time this season, apart from when actually Smith Rowe scored against Leicester, Smith Rowe's been a completely anonymous. And actually, it was unfortunate because Smith Rowe was the second player getting on the end of that chance with Harry Wilson early in the game last night when Wilson hit the bar, and it could have been Smith Rowe on another day that maybe even scores from that situation. I think Pereira and Smith Rowe probably will start if Berger's not available. I think he'll stick with it and go, let's not drop anyone off the back of last night. Let's go again and rebuild that confidence. But I wouldn't mind TC sitting in there for Fulham. I do actually think we'll probably be on change if Berger's not available. But I do agree. I think Diop was harshly dropped, and was that pass against Bournemouth any worse than what we saw last night with Anderson? Anderson's backward header is unlucky. It was like Steven Gerrard against Uruguay in World Cup 2014, where just let Suarez in. It obviously didn't let anyone in that on goal, but it led to a goal, which obviously was incredibly disappointing. Leicester have a few players out as of tonight. Obviously, Edouard can't play against Palace. Fatawu is still out. Herman's still out. Ndidi, Opoku, and Pereira still out as well. Ricardo Pereira. Vestergaard is a doubt as well. So there could be some players that are missing ahead of the game on Saturday. My score prediction is I think Fulham are going to win by 2-0. Okay. If we win away from home with a clean sheet, I think all is forgotten and all is forgiven. And I want that to happen. I think it will happen.
Yeah, I mean, look, what happened is done. All I want to see now is a reaction. They cannot change. I'm sure Leno and Pereira are way more gutted than I am today, because it was them that actually made the errors and are being, ultimately, we all think we're the most gutted. I think they're probably even more gutted. And you can say what you like about Pereira, but I definitely think he cares. He's a player that incredibly frustrates me at times. But I thought that after that pass happened, I thought he was at least trying to make things happen. I don't think he had a terrible game at all, as some are making out. I thought that he made an absolute clanger, and he knows it. He was great against Watford the other night. He was my man of the match vote. I would love to see a performance like that from him. It hasn't happened. That's why I've not included him in my team. But I still think there's a role here for him. I would not be gutted if he got sold for an acceptable price. I'm going to put that out there, and I still stand by that. Mm-hmm. But if not, I'm more than happy for him to still have a role in the squad. I don't think he should be starting for us, though, regularly.
This scapegoat nature in the Fulham fan base, which has been going about years, by the way, at times gets beyond ridiculous, in my opinion. Pereira makes a mistake last night. like Joe, you would make a mistake at work. Like I've made a mistake at work before. We've
Yeah.
all made mistakes in everyday life. Everyone watching this will remember a particular mistake they've made in their life or at work where they've gone, "Oh, I dropped a clanger there." And football is obviously volatile. It's where people are allowed to, well, not allowed, but they choose to express the most sensationalized words against players who make mistakes. I just feel like the scapegoat nature inside the fan base, it won't ever stop because that's just what football fans are. But it has to be cooled down a little bit. It can be quite ridiculous sometimes. And it won't. Me saying that is not going to fix anything. But I just thought it's just not nice. It's not nice at all, really. Joe, it's been nice to catch up, albeit in unfortunate circumstances. We'll be back again next Wednesday. We're getting back on the Jack and Joe show train over Christmas. Like I said, it was just too many fixtures and too much chaos, but the podcast covered it all. So thank you very much to them for doing that. We'll be back again next week. Joe, thank you so much for being here the first time in 2025.
Yeah, cheers, Jack. Good to be back. Hope everyone enjoyed it. Let us know if you're going to Leicester. If you are or you aren't, hopefully you enjoy it a lot more than last night.
Yeah, I mean, Fulham, it could be worse. We've sat on many a Jack and Joe show and talked about relegation scraps, and we're going down Championship. We're losing players. We're losing games. We've only lost 5 Premier League games all season. I know we've drawn a few, but we've had one hell of a season so far. But yeah, it could have been and could still be so much better. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll speak again next week.